Good evening, everybody, and welcome to my wholesale market update for 2016. If those of you who are new to the real estate goddess world don't know maybe that I have been doing these updates annually ever since the market crashed, because the way in which we wholesale houses and the ways in which we find them and what part of the business is the harder part has changed year over year pretty consistently since about 2007. So this is my chance once a year to kind of update everybody on what I'm seeing in the business and what my hundreds of students all over the United States are reporting that they are also seeing. So this is not a basic how do you wholesale web class. This is a class that's going to be more oriented toward people who are either already in the business or at least have the basic education about what wholesaling is and how it works and all those sorts of things. If that's not you, feel free to listen in. We are going to have a recording of last week's webinar on basic wholesaling posted at my website, regoddess.com, within the next day or so, and you can always go back and review that to make sure that you're kind of up to date on what it is, what this wholesaling business that I am about to tell you how it has changed in the last year works. So the other thing is, as many of you know, I am actually in Argentina right now. So we're sort of doing a test of whether the Hotel Club Francis internet is gonna stay working throughout this entire webinar. And I won't be answering questions live at the end just because of the risk that things are going to go south here. If you have questions, I want you to send them to askvena@gmail.com. That's ask, A-S-K, Vena, V like in Victor, E-N-A, @gmail.com. Put them under the subject line question from webinar, and I'm going to make a video answering everybody's questions when I get back from South America in a couple of days. So askvena@gmail.com with any questions that you have. What I'm going to cover tonight is sort of the different categories that are important to you as a wholesaler or as a future wholesaler. One is what's going on in the real estate market as a whole, because as wholesalers, our job, our place in the world is a business to business kind of role. So we are providing inventory not to end users, not to people who are going to live in a property or rent a property, but rather to other businesses. So folks who rent properties or retail properties, and therefore what's going on in the bigger market has a distinct effect on us because it has a distinct effect on our buyers who are investors. So we'll talk a little bit about what's going on in the bigger market. We'll address the competition issue because I know I've been getting a lot of questions about that recently, and competition is definitely up. I'll talk a little bit about how my business has changed in the last 6 to 12 months, some about how we're finding deals right now, how we're evaluating them, because that is a little bit different. And you know, that's something that it swings with the market. If the market's going up, we do certain things. If the market's going down, we do certain things. We'll talk about some new categories of buyers that I find myself working with an awful lot right now. Some of the new technologies that are out there that can help you, and actually they're not really new. They've just become so common that it's easy for even a new investor to take advantage of them. And we'll talk a little bit about my upcoming Wholesaling Academy, which is August the 25th through 28th in Cincinnati. And we're starting to take registrations for that now at regoddess.com. Although at the end here, I will give you a code that will get you a $400 discount on this amazing, awesome event that you really, really need to attend. if you're serious about crushing it in the wholesaling business. So beginning with what's happening in the market. Y'all have read the news. If you're actively in the real estate business, you have experienced the news. And there's what we hear sort of from the National Association of Realtors, who, by the way, always puts the most positive possible spin on what's happening in the real estate world. And there's what we hear from the national media, which picks up the information from the NAR and from Case Shiller and folks like that who put out massive numbers of press releases. And then there's what we're experiencing in the real world, which is that, yes, prices are up. Now, the big news of late 2015, early 2016 was these headlines that said values have now exceeded, so property prices, median prices have now exceeded what they were at the top of the market in 2006, which left those of us who live not on the coasts thinking, where, my house isn't worth more than it was worth at the top of the market in 2006. How is it possible that the National Association of Realtors has declared victory over the crash in house prices, but we're not really seeing that? And the reality is, prices in the bubble markets, the markets that went up real fast and then went down real fast, like San Francisco and New York and Phoenix and places like that, Miami is another example, have in fact fully recovered and in most categories exceeded what their values were in 2006. For the rest of us, for those of us in the Midwest, the South, Plain States, we have not fully recovered the top of the market values. Here in Cincinnati, we're still about 11% down from the top of the market, but prices are increasing just very slowly and steadily, at more of a normal pace for the Midwest. Anywhere from 1% to 2% per year is the real increase in values. Now, as I'm going to show you in a minute when we look at inventory, some of that is being affected by what kinds of houses are selling versus what kinds are not selling. Because whenever you talk about median house price, you have to realize what you're talking about is the price at which half of the houses that sold for more than that number, and half sold for less than that number. So it's a little bit of a fake number in the sense of it doesn't tell you what your house has done in terms of value. In terms of financing, things are actually looking up in that realm for our buyers. For a lot of years, really up through middle of 2015, the finance market for real estate investors was pretty dismal. There was, obviously rates are low and they've just recently dropped again. And that's good for the end buyers who can get FHA loans with a 520 credit score or whatever they're allowing, at 3.5% down, right? But for the typical real estate entrepreneur who could only get 4 to 10 loans, who had to put 20 to 25% down, who had to have a 760 credit score, it was a tiny percentage of the buyers in our industry who could really afford to do that very often. What has happened in the last 12 months is that the investor specialty finance market has blossomed again. I mean, in 2005-06, there were hard money lenders on every corner that would loan you money to buy and fix a property. A lot of those companies were out of business by 2009 because they got a little crazy in how they were making loans and ended up holding the bag on a lot of loans, going bankrupt, were no longer in business. now the number of hard money lenders and therefore the competition amongst them has grown a lot again. And competition amongst lenders is always good for us because that means they sort of lay back a little bit on the really harsh qualifications. I mean, for a while there, you basically could not get a hard money loan unless you could qualify on credit, down payment, experience, right? And now I'm starting to see some hard money lenders again who are truly hard money lenders. They truly are looking at the value of the asset more than they are looking at you. Like what is your credit score? How much skin do you have in the game, and so on. So that's good. There's also been a new interest on really Wall Street amongst some hedge funds and private equity funds in funding rental properties. In fact, a lot of the hedge funds that a couple of years ago when I did this update, I was saying, yeah, these guys are your biggest competitors for buying properties because they have millions of dollars behind them and they're acquiring properties by the hundreds all over the United States. Well, they're not acquiring properties by the hundreds anymore. What many of them are doing instead is making loans to landlords, and they're doing portfolio loans where they hold them themselves. They have credit qualifications, but they're not too terribly stringent. If you have like a 620 credit score, you can probably get one. If you're refinancing, they will look at the equity in the property instead of making you put money down. Their rates are not as good as a conventional loan. They tend to run around 7 to 8%, but they're also fixed rate, which is good. And they have they have like 20-year terms. The problem is that a lot of them do have 5-year balloons in those loans. So the market has opened up some for folks who want financing. At the moment, the financing that you can get is not for on your rental properties is not really ideal. But as the competition in that increases, that will also loosen up, I'm sure. And that's all good news. When our buyers can buy a rental for cash, fix it up, and then refinance it pretty easily, that puts them in the market to buy more houses. Now, inventory, of course, is the big issue of the moment. It's down versus 2012 by about 39%. There's about 600,000 less properties on the market right now nationwide than there would have been in 2012. And everyone's feeling that squeeze, right? It used to be that I remember when we did the was it 09 or 2010 market update, I was saying, you really don't need to spend any money on marketing to buyers or to sellers because there's so many great bank-owned deals on the market. And I was teaching people how to flip bank-owned properties, and the market has shifted. And in the last 24 months, I've done a total of 2 deals that were listed properties that would have been included in this thing that the media calls inventory, because inventory is listed properties, right? Inventory is not who wants to sell, it's who's put their house in MLS. So it's down about 39% versus 4 years ago. And the thing that's really squeezing the investment community is where it's down. If you turned off your screen to play computer solitaire or something, you might want to go back and look at it because there's a very telling graph up. And it says it breaks down the inventory by type of property. So your starter homes, what we call in my world a type 3 neighborhood, bread and butter, probably half rental, half owner occupied, FHA first time homebuyer type properties, versus trade up homes, that's your type 4 areas, versus premium homes, which is premium homes is not a sector that we and our buyers usually play in because they're these are the top most expensive properties in any market, which tends to mean they're newer and you're not going to find a lot of junkers in that arena, and they're very expensive. But if you look at the inventory and where it is, there are as a percentage of houses on the market, many fewer starter homes. There's fewer in all three categories, but if you look at what is the makeup of what's left, there are fewer starter homes now as a percentage of the total market than there were in 2012. There are also fewer move-up homes. Where there are more is in the premium homes. There's actually, as a percentage of the total market, there's more of those high-end homes available than there were in 2012, and there's significantly fewer of the starter homes that we really like as wholesalers because our buyers really like them. So this is interesting. This is interesting that not only is inventory down, but inventory is down in the arena where we like inventory. And the other strange thing about the market right now is why that inventory has shrunk so significantly. Because you'd think with prices recovering and with the economy having been now, in 7 years of supposed growth, that people would be wanting to sell the houses that they couldn't sell before, right? I mean, recovered prices means I'm not underwater on my house anymore, means I can sell my house and go get a bigger, better house, right? Well, there's a lot of psychological stuff going into why is the starter and move-up market so small. Now, one reason is just a pure market reason, and that is builders aren't building that house right now. Builders aren't building the starter home that in my neck of the woods would be $120,000 to maybe $180,000 house. So the people who are living in the $120,000 house right now don't have any place to go in terms of new homes. I mean, and also, new homes add to the inventory. Move up is getting built a little bit more than starter, but the premium homes are where a lot of the building is going on. So that adds to the inventory, and it keeps it sort of keeps people in that. You're not going to go from starter to premium, right? So it sort of traps people in their starter homes a little bit. But what's really trapping them is that now their equity has recovered, right? So they and again, I'm going to talk Cincinnati numbers. If you live in Minneapolis or Seattle or something, you'd add a zero or something to make yourself feel better about this. But I bought a $150,000 house in 2005. I did it with a Nehemiah program where I didn't even put any money into it. In 2008, that house was worth $118,000, but I held on to it. I didn't let it go into foreclosure like a lot of people did when they found themselves underwater. Now it's worth $140,000, and I've paid my loan down to $138,000. Okay, so I'm not underwater anymore, but I don't have enough equity that I can sell my current house and have a down payment on my next house. In fact, if it's worth $140,000 and I owe $138,000, I'm not going to sell that house without paying to sell it. So even though prices are up, there are fewer families underwater on their mortgages than they used to be. They're not enough above water to be able to sell and go use any profits that they might make to buy another house. The second thing is sellers seem very aware that finding a house is a hard thing to do right now, that they may have to make $1,700, offers to get a property, and that they may have to settle for something that's less than ideal at the moment, and that inventory is low. So a lot of people are hesitating to sell their homes because they don't want to be thrown into the buyer pool. And strange things are starting to happen. My realtor friends are starting to say things like, yeah, sellers are asking for 60 days to move and they're getting it because the buyers have made 17 offers and haven't gotten one accepted. And so when the seller says, I accept your offer, but I get 60 days to move, the buyer says, okay, because it's better than not getting a house. The big thing that I think that's happening is people are still feeling very burned by the Great Recession. And a lot of folks are choosing to fix up their starter or move up home, right? They're choosing to make it more like what they ideally want rather than take on a new debt. So there's this underlying fear about the economy. The recovery has been slow. It hasn't, people feel better off than they did in 2007 when they didn't have jobs, but they don't feel enough better off to feel like they can jump into a higher mortgage payment. So there's this thing going on where folks are staying in their starter homes longer than they historically have, just because they want to see if that job is still going to be around. They want to make sure that the economy's not going to turn south again. So that's unusual. I mean, I've seen probably half a dozen up and down markets in the 25 plus years I've been in the real estate business. But this is the first one I've seen that I felt like was primarily psychologically driven by people's fears, by home buyers' fears. Now, investors are buying like crazy. Investor purchases are still a very high percentage of particularly that starter home and lower market. So you're not going to have any trouble finding buyers for your properties if they're good deals, because the retailers know if they can get a decent deal, fix it up and put it on the market, it's gonna be on the market like 4 days and in multiple offers before they sell it. And the landlords know that rents are up, vacancies are down, so it's become a very interesting market that is being driven as much by investment at that low end as it is by home buyers. And another chunk of where are all the starter homes is back in 2009 when a lot of them were bank owned. Guess who bought them? We did. Hedge funds did. They're rentals now. They're not available for resale. And we all thought that the hedge funds would start selling when the market went up, but they're holding on instead because the rents are so far up that their return on investment looks fantastic. So until someone starts building properties at that low end, or alternatively, the hedge funds start selling the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of properties they bought that are down in that starter home arena, it's probably going to continue to be a bit of a squeeze for first-time home buyers to buy a house. Now, over the next 12 months, what's going to happen? Well, I think it's likely, just because this is the longest period of time for increasing house prices that I have ever seen. It's been 7 years. The market bottomed out in 2009. So for the past 7 years, prices have been going up. And 7 years is a long time to have without a dip in the market. So my guess is sometime between this winter and next spring, we will have another mild recession. That'll shake loose some inventory because some people that are holding on to their starter homes or their rental properties will find themselves underwater again. And this time they'll just turn loose of them. There will be more foreclosures. There will probably be an adjustment in prices. Now, in the bubble markets, I don't know that price adjustment is going to be real mild because, Californians, you guys have this cycle that you go through every 15 years where the market spikes and then it drops and then it spikes and then it drops. And we're about 7 years in. And you guys might be out to experience a fairly major price drop like you do every 7 years or so, or every 15 years or so. For the rest of the country, I think we're probably already in a recession, given the numbers that came out for this most recent quarter. And that's going to mean fewer people trying to buy houses, which should loosen up some of the inventory, which is good news if you're a buyer and bad news if you're a seller. So let's address the competition elephant in the room. You are not imagining things. Everybody in the whole world wants to be a wholesaler right now. There's not any question that there are a lot of people running around saying, I'm a wholesaler, I wholesale houses. Whether they actually are or do is a different question. And they are more undereducated than I have ever seen. There is at least one and sometimes two of these national, used to be on TV, and now I'm putting my face on a class to teach people how to get rich in real estate sort of seminars in Cincinnati every weekend. Every weekend. There's at least one of these guys coming through town doing a quote free preview, blah, blah, blah. And the advice that people are coming out of these classes with it's almost criminal. It's such bad, terrible education, and yet it's what these folks want to hear. These folks who, they're not really business people. They're really folks looking for a side hustle. They just want to make a quick buck, and they don't care if it's in real estate or an MLM or selling diabetic test strips or whatever. And maybe, I haven't been to all of these, so maybe some of these folks that I'm talking to just misheard what was being said, but it has been reported to me by these people who are trying to sell me houses at full retail plus and telling me it's a wholesale deal. I'll say, so how much does the house need in repairs? And they'll say $20,000. And I say, where did you come up with that number? And they say, well, I was told to always estimate $20,000. That's crazy. And anyone who wanted to think about this would realize it can't be correct. It can't be correct that a house that's rented needs the same amount of work as a house that is vacant and stripped. It cannot be the case. And it can't be okay to guess at the repair costs, but that's what's happening. Some of these quote gurus are telling people, don't even bother to look at the house. Go on Zillow, use the Zestimate, use $20,000 for repair costs, and you're good. And how do you and I, who are actually in the business, compete with that offer? Because it's going to be higher than the offer that we can make. And the answer is we can't compete with it, and we shouldn't try. We don't play that game by jumping in and playing that game. Another thing that I heard was build your buyers list only from new investors or from out-of-town investors. In other words, only put people on your buyers list who can't do any better a job than you can at evaluating the property. Because if they can do a better job than you, they're not going to buy from you. If you don't have a deal of your own, advertise somebody else's deal. Illegal, rude, unlikely to build rapport with the potential buyers who call you about someone else's deal and then you can't sell it to them. And then here's my favorite one. Just get the property under contract. Don't worry about figuring out if the number's right. Just go ahead and get it under contract, and then send buyers over, and they will tell you whether or not you have it at the right price. All right, if that's what you're doing, why are you getting paid? what value are you bringing to that transaction if you don't know or don't care whether A, it's a good deal for your potential buyer, or B, you're actually going to be able to do what you said you were going to do with the seller. So these people, I would so much rather have educated than uneducated competitors, because what happens with these folks is they only end up selling a fraction of what they put under contract. I've got this one guy who keeps texting me, and he's probably texted me 7 different deals in the last, I don't know, 21 days. And he hasn't sold any of them because they're not good deals, and he doesn't know how to evaluate them in a way to get good deals. And also, he'd rather just put it under contract and let me tell him that it's not going to work, because that's the easy, lazy way to do things. And guys, that is not good. You should be closing pretty much every deal you put under contract, because it should be at the right price. If you have a deal under contract that's a good deal for a buyer, you are going to sell it in the market right now. There's no question. There's so many anxious buyers that if you have a deal that's going to make people money, it's going to sell. So the only reason that a deal you put under contract shouldn't close is because there was a title problem or the seller disappeared. I mean, it shouldn't be anything that's really your fault, because you actually went in and looked at the property, evaluated it, you know what's wrong with it, you belong to your local real estate association, you're going there, you're telling people about it. The good news is that these folks will not be in business when the market turns down, because their buyers, such as they are, won't be in business when the market turns down, because they won't, if they are buying deals for too much money, with a downturn in the market, they're going to get caught holding the bag. Of course, all of this draws negative attention from regulators and the media. Nothing to get a complaint filed against you with the Division of Real Estate, like telling a seller you're going to close and then refusing to return his calls because you can't find a buyer, or telling a real estate agent who calls you, oh yeah, what do? I put buyers and sellers together because you're too stupid to understand what your business is. No, I'm sorry. You haven't had the proper education to understand what your business is, and you just described being a real estate agent without a license to a real estate agent. Good job. Yeah, that's going to attract regulatory attention. And we're starting to see some stories in the media about, this company went out and did this 100 times and blah, blah, blah. And, it's unfortunate, because non-professionals are always the ones who attract negative attention to businesses, right? You don't see the story in the newspaper about the owner of a 100-unit building in the poorest area of town who does a great job keeping it maintained and bed bug free, and his tenants love him. You see the one with the landlord being hauled off in cuffs because he's been ignoring building orders for 2 years. It's always the bad guys that get the attention. So your job has to always be better than these people. Trust me, I have the same thoughts that you do, that go, if I can sell a property at 95% of the after repaired value minus the repair costs to someone who doesn't know how to evaluate it, why don't I do that? Why don't I make hay while the sun is shining? And the answer is, number one, that's not, I'm not in business to maximize my profit from each deal. I'm in business to have a business that provides value to buyers and sellers. And I've also seen what happens to these guys when the market turns and there aren't so many newbies in the market. They go out of business. So you got to be better than these folks. You've got to be honest with your sellers, even when they say, well, this other guy just offered me $169,000 for my $190,000 fixed up house that needs $20,000 in updates. You have to say, look, I don't really know how he's doing that. And my guess is that he isn't going to come through because he just offered to pay you a lot more than any reasonable person can pay you. The number that somebody should be paying you is closer to like 110, and that's what I can give you. So if and when this other guy doesn't come through, call me up and we'll talk again. I mean, I have that conversation over and over and over with people when they claim they've got an offer on the table that I know is from a wholesaler who doesn't know what they're doing and isn't going to close. Make sure you're evaluating the deals right and be ready and able to close deals if you have to yourself. We've had a couple of instances, more than usual in the last 6 months, where the deal was really contingent upon the seller being able to get out of town or out of the country or out from under a tax sale or something like that in a very short time frame, 2 weeks. And in those cases, we say, fine, we'll close as soon as the title search is done. And we do, because I know how to raise money to close deals if I have to do that. And I'm very, very good at evaluation. So I know if I do close it, I'm not going to get stuck with it. So be ready and able to close deals that, add that lever to your bag of tricks, that you know how to get money from partners and private lenders and things to close deals if you have to do it. My business this year has continued to shift toward the rental properties because there's less competition in that arena than there is for the first-time homebuyer and move-up properties. I can't compete with an inexperienced retailer buyer who is going to pay full retail price for a junker property that he's going to fix up and resell. Because he's my buyer. I can only pay what he will pay less $10,000, right? And there's an awful lot of those folks in the market right now. Now, the rental properties are less competitive, and when I say rentals, I'm saying trash flow properties in type 2 rental areas. By the time the dust settles this year, 80 or 85% of the deals we will have done are going to be those rental properties to landlords. Now, the question is, what do you care? What do you care if you're making $10,000 on a deal that you're selling to a landlord versus $10,000 on a deal you're selling to a retailer? I know there's days when I wake up and I think, I'm a junk dealer right now. I'm going out and I'm picking collectibles out of the junk and selling the collectibles. And I know, I wish I could go out and spend all my time in great neighborhoods and good smelling houses, but that's just not the way it is at the moment. The remaining properties, the ones that really are retailable, we're selling for more than 70 cents less repair costs right now, because our buyers who buy that kind of property are finding it extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible, to find a deal at 70 cents on the dollar. So we're just telling them straight out, look, you can go ahead and do your evaluation, but I'm telling you right now, you're paying 75 cents on the dollar less repair costs for this. And we're charging you that right now because the market will more than bear that. If I were to sell it to a newbie, I could sell it for 20% more than that. And they're paying it and they're happy about it. When the market shifts back, we will shift back to that 70 cents on the dollar less repair costs. Now, to be clear, this is the 75% of ARV less repairs is only applying to retail properties, not to rentals. We have in the year 2016 done more of the what I call leave them alone properties than we have ever done in any other year. Now, what is a leave it alone property? If you live in the Midwest or South, you know what I'm talking about. It's a property where the repair costs either exceed the fixed up value of the property, Or when you do the after repaired value times 0.7 minus repair cost, you end up with a negative number, right? Anyone who's been in the market in Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, St. Louis, any place where there is such a thing as a $50,000 house has had this experience of getting a call from somebody where you just went, I don't know what to do about this unless you give me money to take your house. So we've had 6 of these this year that basically followed sort of this scenario. This is the most recent one we did. We put this one under contract last week. It is a 2-family. It is in a type 2 minus neighborhood. It's definitely a rental neighborhood. You definitely would be able to buy crack fairly easily in this area. It is not a place that you would go at night to collect your rents. I mean, there's a lot of crime in this area. Needs about $35,000 in work. If you look closely at the roof, you can see that even in the picture from last year, a lot of the shingles are missing, and yes, that is leaking pretty badly, and it's done some significant water damage to the 3rd floor. It's worth maybe $45,000 completely fixed up, so if you do the usual math, the sale price on this should be negative $3,500. And in 2009, I would have told this seller, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do for you unless you want to give me $10,000. And then I would have taken 7 of that and given somebody else 3 to take it off my hands, right? These days, because the market is squeezed a lot, we're actually able to make money off of these properties if we can basically get them for free. Now, in this case, and each owner has a different story, of course, but the owner bought a tax lien on this property. She lives in Florida. She has no idea what Avondale is or what she's getting into when she buys a property or buys tax lien on a property that has been vacant for 3 years in an area like this. She called us back in January and said, I'm getting ready to foreclose on this tax lien, and then I want $25,000 because that'll get me back what I paid plus what I paid to foreclose and a little bit of profit. And I said, wait, don't foreclose. Foreclosing would be a huge mistake. Just let it ride and let somebody else buy it at a tax sale because you are already into this property for a lot more money than you're ever going to get back, and foreclosing is just going to make it worse. And of course, she did not at all take my advice because she said, well, I talked to a real estate agent. The real estate agent said it was worth $65,000. Well, A, it's not. And B, it might be if it hadn't been vacant for 3 years. But it's going to be stripped. It's going to be destroyed. And this was without even driving by it, right? Because it's just that kind of neighborhood. So she called again at the beginning of this month, and she said, I foreclosed on it. I had somebody go look at it. I don't want it. I will do anything to get rid of it. And so at that point, I did go drive by and take a look at it. And it's rough, okay? But I said, look, we will take it off your hands for free. Like you give it to us. You got $402 in current taxes due. We will take that over. But the number on the purchase agreement is going to be $0. And if you can't agree to that, then there's nothing we can do for you. And she said, I'll take it. Send me a contract. So this is, again, one of 6 properties like this that we've done this year. And you now you're sitting there saying, well, what are you going to do now? You have a house that didn't cost you anything, but it's not worth anything either. The thing is, this property is going to end up selling to someone who is not going to have to pay contractors to do the work. The $35,000 in repairs numbers was pay for the materials at Lowe's, pay for contractors. Somebody who goes in and does the work themselves isn't going to spend anything like that. They're going to spend $7,000, maybe $11,000 on materials. So it's going to go to somebody, and this is typical of these properties, it's going to go to somebody who lives in the neighborhood, who's a contractor for a living, who's going to it's going to take them 7 or 8 months to fix this because they're going to be doing it in their spare time. But then they're going to rent it for $1,400 a month, and they're going to be the wealthiest person they know because they own a house that is throwing off $1,400 a month in income. So we're going to sell it for $5,900 cash or more likely, because when we offer both of these options on a house like this, usually people take the second option. $7,900 with like $900 down and payments of $200 a month for 36 months, and then it's paid off, right? And if you're sitting there thinking, well, what are you going to do if the person doesn't pay? The answer is nothing. The answer is we won't foreclose on this, because if we got the upfront payment and 6 months worth of payments, we are to the good, and the mortgage will sit there. And if it goes to a tax sale, we might get some money. If the the buyer tries to sell it 10 years from now, we will get paid back with interest, but it's not something where, it's a free house. So I hope if you live in a place like I live that you're doing some of these free house deals, because there seem to be an awful lot of them right now. How are we finding them? Again, very difficult to get wholesale priced deals from the usual sources, MLS, HomePath, FHA, folks like that, because there's just too many people fishing in that pond. If you were used to being able to buy properties at really lowball prices from the hedge funds that buy them in mass from the banks and then turn around and sell them, you've probably noticed that their prices have gotten silly now, because they are able to sell to all these new investors who are going to do the work themselves, et cetera, et cetera. And you can't, we in 2010, we got like 16 houses from these hedge funds, and maybe 5 in 2011, and almost none since then, because they are able to sell at much higher prices than a true wholesale price these days, although that, again, will change when the market does. Your best wholesale deals, if you're not marketing, if you're not using direct mail or a website or bandit signs or a sign on your car or something, you're probably not doing deals. You have to be reaching out to sellers who either don't feel like they've got time to put the property on the market, or they've already been told by a real estate agent, your property's too rough for me to want to put it on the market without you doing fix-up work. That's the only way to go. And it seems like a lot of our deals right now are coming from out-of-state owners. Many of them, in addition to being out of state, have some kind of a code violation on the property. We're gonna end the year this year having done almost as many deals as we did last year, despite the fact that the market has gotten, quote, so competitive. But I will tell you, we're doing more marketing to get those deals. We upped our amount of direct mail from 400 to 600 per week, about 400 pieces to 600 pieces per week a few months ago, and that was in response to the fact that, the response rate has dropped some because a lot of these categories of sellers are getting a lot of mail, and also the fact that a lot of them call and say, well, I will take your offer if it's higher than this idiot over here who offered me way too much for my house. And those don't turn into deals for 6 months until the seller realizes that that idiot is not, in fact, going to close. So a little bit about property valuation, because the market has been going up and because it's been, days on market are very few. The short days on market. You want to make sure that you're staying close in time and close in area with your comps. I've seen a couple of people who've sent inner circle questions into the website who have sent me comps that were a mile away from the property they're trying to find the value of, and right now that's not necessary or desirable. Your best comparables are 6 months or less old, and they're within a quarter of a mile although I'm not going to argue with you about a half a mile as long as they're in the same neighborhood and in the same school system. And right now, I mean, for years we were being pretty conservative in our comparables because, the market dropped and then it was kind of skipping along the bottom. And I was saying if you've got a comparable at 140, 142, and 145, you should probably say 142 is your value. Right now, with the market still going up, I think it's fair to say for a substantially similar property, 145 is a good comp because your retailer buyer is going to put the property on the market for 147.5 and probably get it because, again, that inventory issue. So you don't have to be quite as conservative with comps right now as I was telling you 2, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. When the market shifts, we will go back to looking at the average and lower comps, because when a market starts going down, you can't tell people, well, 6 months ago a property sold for 145 and since then it's been 142 and 140. You have to use the lower comps. Couple of observations about buyers, and this is partly just because of the kinds of properties that we find ourselves getting deals on right now. Our biggest buyer at the moment is what I call the white collar landlord. This is the guy or gal who has a full-time, really good job with a high income and good health insurance and a nice 401k and isn't really looking to quit that job early, like maybe at 55 or 60 instead of 65, but they're not looking to become full-time real estate investors. And a few years ago, these guys really only wanted rental properties in starter home areas, and I'm finding that they're shifting to where they're looking for more cash flow and are willing to take a neighborhood that they wouldn't necessarily be willing to go collect their rent in. So the trash flow properties, the type 2 properties, what's interesting about these guys is they're buying for retirement. They're not necessarily interested in current income, so they want to pay these things off really fast. But they're paying to have these properties managed. Now, and those trash flow properties have for decades been the sole provenance of the do-it-yourselfer landlord, right? How do you make money on a property in a rental neighborhood with high maintenance and management struggles? The answer is you do the maintenance and management yourself, right? That's always been what folks have done. But because rents are up significantly and the prices on the houses are up less significantly, these folks have found a way to hire property managers to deal with their tenants and the tenant drama, and they're paying out the wazoo for it. I mean, they're paying 10% of their monthly rent plus a rent-up fee when the property goes vacant, plus an override on maintenance. So if I have to spend $4,000 on a new roof, it's actually going to cost me $4,800 because my property manager's overseeing that. And it's kind of a new frontier in terms of, this isn't Mr. Roper. This isn't the guy in overalls who's going to go fix the leak himself and complain about it the whole time and beat on your door if the rent's a day late. He's got a property manager doing that. He's not getting anywhere near the properties himself. And we don't evaluate houses any differently for these guys. Like many of you who've been to my class, you know about the trash flow analysis and how to use it to set values on these low-end properties. We don't change the trash flow analysis to take into account the fact that these guys are paying an extra 10%. Because the house is worth what it's worth. It doesn't matter what you decide to spend on it. That would be in excess of what a normal person would decide to spend on it. But the thing is, they're buying them anyway. And I don't know. I'm not going to argue with them. These are smart people who can do math. So a second buyer that we've run across a lot lately is high-income millennials. These are folks that are in their late 20s through mid 30s who have had 7 jobs since they graduated from college. And each and every job, one of the come-ons was, we have a 401k. And, they get dissatisfied and they quit. And the 401k, which is only when they quit $10,000 or $11,000, gets rolled over into an IRA. And a lot of these folks, seriously, at the age of 35, will have $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in a self-directed IRA, not because they've been such good savers, but because they've rolled over IRAs from old jobs into these or 401ks from these old jobs into these IRAs, and they're not really looking for. Again, they're not looking to become flippers or wholesalers or whatever. They want passive income. They want to quit their jobs when they're like 40 or 45. We'll see how that actually works out for them, but they're looking to, again, pay down properties very quickly and have somebody else manage them so that when they're 45 years old, they have $60,000 a year in passive income, and they can just quit their jobs because their jobs don't fulfill them, and therefore they should not have to work them. The other type of buyer that we're having a lot of interaction with at the moment is the full-time rehabber who is doing some or all of the work himself. And the reason I think that these guys are being successful in the market at the moment is because getting work scheduled on a property has become a big challenge this summer. A lot of the contractors who you would have hired back in 05 or 06 when the market crashed and the housing market just disappeared, they went on SSI, they went and retrained for other jobs, they did all sorts of things that meant that now that the market is back and there's a lot of work for them, they are not there. And it is getting increasingly difficult to find contractors who can do work at a reasonable price who can do it now. Like we have to schedule work, major work, turnover, like big, not just paint and carpet, but going to do a whole house 6 or 8 weeks in advance right now, which is a real problem for rehabbers who get eaten alive by holding costs. So these guys, they can go in and do the demo themselves or start the work themselves. I think are able to pay a little bit more and still come out at the back end with a profit that they're happy with. So we're seeing more of these by the retail properties than the traditional I'm gonna general contract, but somebody else is doing all the work, guys. Technology-wise, I titled this slide New Technology, but obviously virtual assistants are not new. You've been hearing about them for years. It's time, you guys who've at least done some deals, it's time to hire one. It's become so easy through companies like Upwork and Fiverr to hire somebody to design that logo for you, or hire somebody to put up your website, or hire somebody to take that list of driving for dollars names you have and turn it into a list of mailing addresses by looking it up in the tax rolls. If you're not using one of these folks at $3 an hour, which is what they cost, you're almost certainly doing work that's way below your pay grade, that if you could turn it over to somebody else, you could spend more time on the higher end stuff. So please get yourself a virtual assistant. They can answer your phones for you. They can take your tenant calls for you. A lot of them speak better English than you do. So stop thinking about it and go hire somebody, please. Second thing is there are now a number of the wholesaling industry in particular has been struggling for years with how do I solve the problem of I mailed out 500 postcards this week. and now the calls are coming in, but also I mailed out 500 the prior week, and I'm not sure whether the calls are coming in from the probate mailing I did 2 weeks ago or from the absentee owner mailing I did this week. And how do I keep track of all of these things and the incoming leads, and when do I need to follow up with people, and when do I need to do the second mailing? And there's really no reason anymore to, because we tried adapting Excel and Act and all sorts of things that weren't really, a couple of realtor type databases that weren't really made for the wholesaling business. And there are enough of these out there now available by subscription that there's no reason to struggle with any of that anymore. The one that we use is REI Black Book. Those guys will be at the Wholesaling Academy in August if you haven't already heard their pitch and seen how the thing works. But to me, messing around with having to look up who do I need to mail a second time, where did this guy come from, spending 20 minutes on that 3 times a day is the equivalent of that frustrating experience you have when you know there's a file on your computer, but you can't find it and it's driving you nuts. And when the solution exists, why would you not take it? Speaking of the Wholesaling Academy, get these dates down. It's August the 25th, 26th, 27th, and 28th. Here in Cincinnati, this is the last one for 2016. This is your last chance to get in and get the hands-on, gonna go look at properties, gonna make seller calls, gonna really walk through deals the way they happen, education that you're gonna need if you're gonna compete with all of these uneducated dummies out there who are making your life miserable. They make it more miserable if you're one of them. So come to the Wholesaling Academy. It's hardcore learning for 4 days. It's going out and seeing how deals work, like in actual properties. The only way to beat the competition is be better. And the Wholesaling Academy is going to make you the best of the best in your market. It includes a couple of really detailed manuals, the Real Estate Goddess's Guide to Wholesaling Houses and the Real Estate Goddess's Guide to Building a Wholesale Business. These are going to be your reference manuals after you get home and you're like, what did she say about the best way to find deals? I don't remember. How much did she say a roof costs? It also comes with 18 hours of audio. It's very inexpensive to attend. If you have never gotten one of my wholesaling courses, you've never been to the academy before, it's $19.97 for one person. It's $29.97 if you want to bring a spouse, a family member, someone who's going to be doing business with you. And when you compare that to the profit from one wholesale deal, because this is, I literally, I will show you in a minute, guarantee that you're going to leave here and you're going to make an extra $10,000 over the next 90 days. $19.97 is not a lot to invest for that, particularly with a money-back guarantee. If you already have the Real Estate Goddess's Guide to Wholesaling home study course and you bought it from me, not from your friend at RIA, but from me, it's only $600 for you to come. And it would be crazy for you not to. It's crazy for you not to either way, but if you've gotten the home study course, you've kind of gone out, tried it out, you're going to get even more out of this because you're going to be bringing some real world knowledge and experience into the event. It's got a double money back guarantee. Guarantee number one is you will be absolutely convinced by Sunday night that it was the best 4 days you possibly could have invested in your real estate investing business. And if you can honestly say it's not, return the home study courses and we will write you a check back for your entire tuition. The second guarantee is a results guarantee that says it will make you an extra $10,000 in the next 90 days after you leave the event. So you got September, October, November. Go out and implement it, and you will make an extra $10,000. And if you don't, you can return the course materials and get a full refund. That is how convinced I am that it's absolutely going to change your financial future for the better and forever. because doing one deal isn't going to change your life. It's the knowing how to do them consistently, how to beat out all these uneducated competitors, how to do what you say you're going to do with sellers, how to offer good deals to buyers. It's that knowledge, it's that ability to generate the money that's going to change your life. If you go to regatas.com/WSA16 special, you're going to be able to sign up at a $400 discount through the end of next week. So it will be $15.97 for one person if you are new to all of this. If you are an existing student, it works out to $300, I think. So, but you have to use that code, or you have to call Christy before next week at 888-ASK-VENA. That's where to go if you have any questions, want to reiterate anything that we've talked about tonight, whatever. 888-ASK-VENA is the way to go. I look forward to seeing you guys there. I got a lot of great stuff to teach you that's a little bit more advanced, how to raise money to close deals and how to sell deals with financing to buyers because they love that. And just all kinds of really up-to-date, go home and do it in the current market right now and have the confidence to know you're doing it right and make money sort of stuff. So I look forward to seeing you on August the 25th, regatas.com/WSA16 special or 888-ASK-VENA to register. Again, if you have questions, I'm not going to take them right now, but if you will send them to askvena@gmail.com under the header webinar question, I will make a video next week about all the different questions I got asked. But please make this decision to come to the Wholesale Academy. It's going to change your life. I promise you. And in fact, if it doesn't, I'm going to give you your money back. So I'll see you guys in August. Everybody have a great week and happy investing.